You may now begin, Commissioner.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Housing Opportunities Commission Development and Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. I am Commissioner Jeff Merkowitz, virtually, and in the committee room is Commissioner Roy Priest, and also joining me on the committee and virtually is Commissioner Robin Solomon, and joined also in person are staff, President Chelsea Andrews and Vice President Kayreen Brown. Our first order of business today is the approval of the minutes of May 24th, 2024. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Our first agenda item, or first action item on the agenda, has to do with the selection of a contractor for Forest Oak Towers. I will hand it over to President Chelsea Andrews.
Thank you, and good afternoon, commissioners, members of the public, the HOC team. We have quite a robust agenda here today, starting with this first request. This is a pretty straightforward matter in regards to taking steps to improve the retaining wall at Forest Oak Towers. I will turn it over to our real estate team and Paul Vinciguerra, the construction manager, to provide more details on this request.
Here today to request approval to select and execute a contract with Atlanta Builders as contractor for the Forest Oak Towers retaining wall project pursuant to request for proposal number 2458. Forest Oak Towers is a 175 unit age restricted high-rise building in Gaithersburg, Maryland. The reason we have to replace the retaining wall is it's an old wood retaining wall and it's outlived its useful life. Plus we have other fixes. We're replacing an existing storm drain inlet. We're adding the storm drain inlet to fix the drainage problem in the parking lot. We're also doing some upgrades to the parking lot area that has deteriorated due to the water not draining properly. Can you please, next page, please. Okay. The scope of work may include, but it's not limited to, replacing a retaining wall. We'll be installing a block wall, removing the old wood wall. We have extensive storm drain work, replacing storm drain inlets, outlets. We're putting a bigger drain away from the curb in the parking lot to catch any water. If it does back up, it will drain down into the new drainage area that we're installing as part of the retaining work. We issued an RFP a few months ago. We received 2 bids. Next page, please. Okay, these are the criteria to select a contractor. We have our minimal qualifications. Respondents submitted all information requested in RFP. Basically, the biggest thing is the qualifications and experience, then qualifications and capabilities, current and past performance, and pricing, proposed subcontracting plan, and MFD participation. And the points for each criteria section is to the right. Okay, next page, please. Okay. Once again, we're showing they must have a minimum of 5 years experience with completing work with a similar scope of work. Contractor must be licensed to conduct business in Montgomery County and the state of Maryland. It must be able to cover the insurance and provide a 100% payment performance bond. In regards to our RFP 2458, we received 2 bids. The first bid was from Atlanta Builders for $499,000 and $450,000. The second bid is from Prisma Contracting for $689,000. Next page, please. Okay, summary issues, considerations. Staff is requesting Development Finance Committee to join staff and recommending Atlantita Builders to go to the full commission meeting on July 10th. We'd like to authorize the president and executive director to negotiate and execute a contract with Atlantita Builders for the scope budget of $499,450. And we're also asking to have the project budget to include the $499,450,000 with Atlantita Builders. Plus HOC, we would like to add a HOC held contingency of 15%, which totals $74,917.50 for a total project budget of $574,367.50. There is no impact on the commission except at fiscal year 25 operating budget, no fiscal impact. The funding for this project will come from the RFR and Forest Oak Towers excess operating cash at the property. Time frame is we'd like to get it approved for the July 10th commission meeting. And then staff recommendation is approve the selection of Atlantita Builders Incorporated as the contractor for Forest Oak Towers retaining wall project pursuant to RP 2458. Authorize President Andrews to negotiate and execute a contract with Atlantita Builders for $499,450 and to approve a project budget to include the base contract amount, $499,450, plus a HOC held contingency of 15%, which is $74,917.50 for a total budget of $574,367.50.
Down to the cents.
Excuse me?
Yeah, down to the cents. So,
So,
Yeah.
That's the end of my presentation. I'll take any questions if you have any.
are there any questions from the commission or from the committee?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
One, the condition that's being corrected by virtue of this contract.
Yeah.
How was this condition discovered? Was it by inspection?
It was discovered a few years ago, and then due to COVID, it got held up. So when we got back to work, we started working on it again, having to hiring a civil engineer to create the drawings. It was found by property management doing an inspection of the property.
Okay,
So-
very good. Have we ever done business with this particular contractor?
No,
before?
we have not, but we checked all his references and they came back pristine. So
I don't have any other questions.
If there are no other questions, can I get a motion to support the staff's recommendations and send this to the full commission?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion
Aye.
is approved. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is to add a consultant to our real estate development and financing consulting pool. Again, I will turn it over to President Andrews.
Thank you. Commissioners, this particular matter is one where, as you know, we have a very robust pipeline. We rely on our in-house expertise, but also have consultants that help support us along the way. In this particular procurement, we were solely focused on trying to establish a stronger and more robust base as it pertains to the development financing consultants that are in our current pool. I will turn it over to our real estate team in this particular matter. I believe Walker Taylor, the financial analyst, will make this presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, President Andrews. Good afternoon. For the record, Walker Taylor, financial analyst. We are recommending the approval of a real estate financing consultant under the existing development and finance consultant pool pursuant to RFQ 2386-1. So last June, we issued RFQ 2386 for real estate development and financing consultant services. We received 23 responses. And on November 15th, 2023, the commission approved recreating a pool of 22 firms. And then on June 16th, we issued RFQ 2386-1 This is a reissuance of RFQ 2386. And the main purpose of this reissuance was due to the fact that under the existing pool established under RFQ 2386, we have 20 development specific consultants and only 2 finance specific consultants. So as HOC's transactions become larger and more complex, in order to bolster the assistance needed in accessing financing services and the structuring of HOC's development projects, RFQ 2386-1 was issued. And it should be noted that RFQ 2386-1 was only issued for the financing activities, and it did not solicit any additional firms for development activities. Next slide, please. These consultants will compete to be engaged on an as-needed basis and funded from respective real estate development budgets. So staff is recommending that the commission approve the sole respondent Meridian Investments to be added into the existing pool of consultants to provide financing services. Next slide. So Meridian was previously in the pool established under RFQ 2125, but did not respond to RFQ 2386. And Meridian has procured capital for 2 recent HOC acquisitions, Battery Boulevard and Bradley Crossing. In these deals, Meridian closed over 129 million of acquisition financing for HOC provided by Eagle Bank. Next slide. But here we'll just get into the minimum qualifications. These did not change from RFQ 2386, and Meridian met all the minimum qualifications. Next slide. Same thing with the evaluation criteria here. Did not change from RFQ 2386. All right, that should be it. If there are any questions.
Do they provide any special financing expertise, or you don't really use these consultants to get tax credit equity, I assume, or do you?
Correct. Yeah. So most of the time when we solicit for, a lot of tech investors and some of those standard sort of project specific financing, we do it on a project by project basis. So what we've been looking for with the past pool and with this pool is are really firms that can help us to both structure non-LIHTC or non-standard financing. So for instance, as you saw in the packet, previously Meridian helped us structure some really attractive acquisition financing, again, non-LIHTC. And the other piece is to really help us to further build our overall relationships across the financing sector, because we do more than just sort of standard affordable housing transactions, and because HOC is continually innovating, creating new products like the Housing Production Fund and so forth. We look to firms like these to help us to not only structure financing for deals, but also to think about programmatically what are some additional tools that would be helpful, and who are the likely firms out there that wouldn't normally come through our door as like a tax credit investor that might be sources of these non-traditional sources.
Thank you.
My question
Are there
doesn't,
any other? Oh, go ahead, Ray.
yeah, it doesn't have to do with the recommendations for Meridian, but I'm just curious to know that since we created this pool, how much utilization have we made out of it?
So from the original pool, the pool that preceded this one that was in place from, I think, 18 to 23, we really used it on a fairly limited basis. Meridian was one. And really on the development side is where we used a couple of firms, CDC for the Leggett, for instance. But we certainly anticipate using both the development and finance to a much higher degree, given the production fund, given the size of the pipeline and the increase in the pipeline. We definitely, and because of these additional financing tools, these different non-traditional approaches to affordable housing, we certainly anticipate needing more of these, which is part of why we went back out, having only 2 in the pool thus far.
Thank you. I recommend supporting the staff's recommendation to advance this forward to the full commission.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we continue, is there a way to get a camera on the presenters?
Yes, IT, we do have a camera on the presenters from our view. You're not able to see Zach currently, Commissioner Merkowitz?
No. Are you able to see him, Rama?
No,
Oh,
but he's
wow.
never looked better.
Well, hold tight. Let me allow IT to chime in here in terms of the view that the commissioners have. To give
Can
a
he
moment.
see you? Are you able to see Chelsea?
Yeah, no, I can see everybody else.
You just
We
can't see the presenter.
We can, yeah, we can keep moving while, there we go. So, great. Thank you.
Okay.
I told you
Resolved.
they never looked better. See?
Visible man. Our next item on our agenda has to do with several actions related to our Metro Point property. And President Andrews.
Yes, thank you. Commissioners, as you all know, we are pleased to move forward with revitalizing our Metro Point property located in Wheaton. This particular next step will allow us to move forward with much needed renovations of the interior and exterior of this development, and will allow us to ensure that it also has higher energy efficiency. I will turn it over to Alex Lawrence, our Housing Acquisition Manager, for this presentation.
Thank you, President Andrews. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Alex Loren, Housing Acquisition Manager, here today to ask Development and Finance Committee to join staff in recommending following items to Commission. One, the authorization to select Zavos Architecture and Design to provide architectural services for the renovation of Metro Point. Two, the authorization for the President to negotiate and execute a contract for the renovation of Metro Point. And three, the approval of a pre-development budget through fiscal year 2025 in the amount of $1,399,440 and the approval of the funding of said budget with a loan from OHRF. So Metro Point is 173 units in Wheaton, Maryland, built above the Wheaton Metro Kiss and Ride, and consists of 120 market rate units and 53 affordable units. Of the 53 affordable units, 35 are reserved for families with the incomes at or below 50% AMI, and 18 are reserved for families at 30% AMI. It's owned in 2 condominiums, with Wheaton Metro LP owning the 53 affordable units, which was originally funded with LIHTC equity, and then the 120 unrestricted units owned by Wheaton Metro Development Corporation. Metro Point was delivered in 2008 during the global financial crisis and has struggled to maintain positive cash flow since, with HOC supporting the property by funding its operating shortfalls. A major focus of the prospective REIT syndication and renovation will be eliminating these annual shortfalls and putting Metro Point onto a better financial path. The scope of the renovation will focus primarily on interior and exterior upgrades to enhance the asset's marketability, reinforcement of the structural components, and reinvestment in the building systems. Go to slide 4, please. So recent actions that were taken by the commission, the initial 15-year compliance period elapsed in 2023. In July 2023, HOC received proposal from Wells Fargo to sell its interest in the Wheaton Metro LP ownership, which was approved by commission in fall of 2023. And the closing of that transaction is expected to occur by the end of this month. Next slide, please. So the property is currently managed by Bizzuto Management and is 96.5% occupied, with 100% of the affordable units occupied, and an average market rental rate of $2.11 per square foot. Property amenities include a large club room with pool table, lounge seating, and kitchen, fitness center, and business center. The property is also conveniently located directly across the street from a Safeway and other eateries and shops, and is within walking distance to the Wheaton Arts and Entertainment District in Westfield Mall. Next slide, please. Here you see the unit mix, plus a list of the 2 retail tenants that comprise the 3,000 square feet of retail along both Georgia Ave and the side street that I'm blinking on. And then next slide, please. So when looking at comparables within the local market, a few of the buildings have been delivered more recently and have more up-to-date finishes when in comparison to MetroPoint. MetroPoint has dated finishes with carpet flooring, plastic laminate countertops, fluorescent lighting, whereas more recent deliveries include LVT or hardwood flooring, quartz and granite countertops, and LED lighting that make the buildings more modern and energy efficient. Next slide, please. The targeted scope of work for the renovation will be to update and upgrade the units, amenities, and exteriors, as well as replace the roof, mechanical systems, investigate the structural systems there, and the improvement of sustainability and energy efficiency. These improvements will not only address curb appeal, but will also increase energy efficiency to reduce operating costs and extend the property's useful life. Slide 9, please. So in April of this year, HOC staff issued a task order for architectural services for the renovation scope to a short list of firms selected from the pool of architects for renovation. That pool was the pool approved by commission in November of 2023. 4 of the 8 firms solicited submitted a proposal. A scoring committee reviewed those proposals based on 5 criteria: qualifications, experience, price, schedule, and MFD participation. Next slide, please. Here you'll see a list of the 4 firms that submitted proposals. All of them had quite the portfolio of experience on renovation projects, LIHTC finance projects, and tenant relocation projects. 3 of the 4 firms also had quite a extensive experience working with HOC previously. Next slide, please. After a review of the proposals, scoring team scored Zavos the highest. Based on their demonstrated portfolio of projects of a similar scope and size, with high sustainability standards and tenant relocations, their experience with LIHTC finance projects, and their proposed fee. Next slide, please. To commence pre-planning and concept design through construction documents and LIHTC applications, staff is also requesting a pre-development budget of $1,399,440 to be funded with a loan from OHRF. This will allow for the progression of design, investigative studies by the engineers, and the preparation of a LIHTC application prior to fiscal year end 2025. Next slide, please. This is a sequence of planned action items that will be brought back to commission over the next 12 months. You'll see the next step here would be the approval of a preliminary development plan after engaging the architects and engineers to more closely refine and identify a scope for the renovation. Next slide, please. In conclusion, we're recommending the Development and Finance Committee join staff in recommending the commission authorize the selection of Zavos for architectural services, authorize the president to negotiate and execute a contract with Zavos, and approve a pre-development budget in the amount of $1,399,440 for fiscal year 2025. Welcome any comments or questions at this time.
One question I had was, in terms of the operating efficiencies, or what's going to help get us into the black on this project. You mentioned energy efficiency. Are there other operating efficiencies or changes? What's going to make the difference in this project?
Yeah, so I think the primary one is really the infusion of new capital, and so we're obviously going to be doing a comprehensive renovation, which should help with things like repairs and maintenance. But it's also the infusion of new tax credit equity, which affects the overall basis of the project, and so it gives us an opportunity to resize reserves and to re-underwrite the deal as we refinance it. So I think from a physical standpoint, it's the reinvestment in the building in a way that R&M should come down. Certainly things like utilities benefit from the energy efficiency. And then there'll be one of the things we'll be exploring is, with a renovation, what happens to the market rate side. So is there an ability to for the market rate side to perform better, you know, when you replace that laminate, when you upgrade the features to be more consistent with what else is in the market. And so that'll be a big part of our exploration is really the market rate side too. So beyond even operating expenses, it's also a question of revenue generation.
I mean, going along with Jeff's comment is there's just no background on the financing that you're proposing. Are there sales proceeds in the transfer from one HOC entity to a new partnership or LLC? We're committing $1.4 million without any sense of what your pro forma looks like. I did, and you of course have one. Otherwise, you wouldn't be pursuing the deal. It's sort of basic information. We get information that's useful on what you're planning to do physically, and we see some nice pictures. I don't know, you're doing a 4% deal, a 9% deal. There's just, as a fiduciary, and I'm sure you know what you're doing, and I'm sure it's all fabulous, but as a fiduciary to commit $1.4 million to get us through an application without any sense of the overall projections. I don't know, Roy, do you feel comfortable with that? Jeff, it just doesn't seem like as fiduciaries, we should have some sense. You know, Jeff asked a logical question. We could see a summary of changes in O&M and utilities and certainly rents. I'm sure rents are projected to go up on the market rate side. Rates are high today, probably higher than they were in 2008. It just seems like a logical thing. We've raised this before. And I know you're used to doing this when you've got the final numbers, but we're committing resources without any understanding of the overall financing structure and numbers of the deal. Not every single line item. I mean, Roy, Jeff, do you know what the financing is like in this transaction at all? What the developer fee is, if any, what the sales proceeds are? Who's the unrelated party? Are they getting any upside in the deal? I know that's not what the purpose is, but Jeff's question goes right to what are the numbers really?
On that point, I mean, I think that there was a reference to the fact that the overall development budget for this could amount to $31 million. About $180,000. I don't know that at this point in time now you've done any sources and uses of funds and how you're going to finance the ultimate development. This is just the first phase of pre-development. So, I mean, I know you've looked down to the fact that there's a $31 million potential exposure for doing this project, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think our approach to this is this is a fairly standard, so I think part of this is that, it's just that this is kind of our standard renovation approach. So it'll be very similar to the other, we're just finishing 4% renovations. So our general sense is this is just another one for that sort of approach. So yeah, it'd just be a 4% LIHTC renovation, similar to the other ones that we've done. We kind of do one or two of these a year. And so we certainly have ballpark ideas, but one of the things that getting the architect on board really does is to understand really what is the scope of the renovation, because that's that's one of the big numbers that can move around. So it's, I think to some extent we're securing the architect to help better understand what that hard cost number is. Right now we're using, kind of assumptions based on other recent similar renovations that we've done. And so, we're comfortable that it's similar to all the other ones that we've been doing recently, but I understand the question.
Yeah, trust me, you've got a pro forma, we all understand it's preliminary. You've got lots of expertise in this county, what things cost, kitchens aren't rocket science. It's just, we're committing $1.4 million. It'd be nice for the commission to understand the financing. I assumed it was a 4% deal. But it seems to me a basic fiduciary duty. If we're committing $1.4 million, we should have some idea what your idea is of the financing. We're grown-ups, we understand hard cost change. Probably every line item in your pro forma will change. We're grown-ups enough to understand and accept changes. To me, it's common sense. You're also selling it to yourself. I don't know, are there net sales proceeds? Is the unrelated party getting any upside in the deal, at least in the pro forma, you have to show some to get a tax opinion. We've talked about this before. It's kind of basic, I think. I don't need to see, I'm happy to see it, but I don't need to see the entire pro forma, but we should have some idea beyond just a rough total number of uses and a 180,000 a unit of rehab. I know that's not the subject today, but you go back in time in this presentation and talk about other things. As a fiduciary, I'd like to know what the deal broadly looks like, and I don't think that's an unfair request. We could also do this another time, but I want to do it before final numbers, which seems to be the tradition in the commission. We have final numbers, take it or leave it. It's not presented that way, of course, but by then it's baked. And I would like to know as a fiduciary just where you're heading. And I'm sure it's all up and makes sense. You guys are very professional, but we are fiduciaries.
I mean, I think that the approach that's being put forth to us is consistent with what we've done in the past. No question about that. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that as we go forward, maybe some later discussion, not necessarily related to whether we should go forward with this, is going to be just what is the level of information that the committee wants to see as part of moving future development forward. Okay. So that we can be consistent. Just as we spent time some time ago thinking about what an RFP look like, for example, and we came with a standard format. So we could come up with some agreement on what is the level of information we need to see when you're starting and doing pre-development on a development. Ultimately, it's going to cost you $31 million. You want to know a little bit more than just we're going to start down this road together. So, well, what does that look like? And I think we can work on that.
So if you go back to the phasing, not the phasing, the future commission actions, a prior slide maybe. I'd like to stick in here somewhere reviewing the financing plan. I can send you I can take part of one of my models, take out all the numbers and just have basic things so that, like Jeff's question, Jeff asked a financing question. Are you saving OpEx? Are you raising rents? That's a perfectly logical question. We can do it in summary form. I'll write something. You can all then look at it and say it's nuts. It won't be every single line item. I don't need to see every single legal fee and all that stuff. But I think this is a rational discussion to have, so we just know what we're doing. I knew it was a 4% deal, but the commission doesn't know it's a 4% deal. It could have been another 9% deal because the deal struggled. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a reasonable request. And I also take Roy's point that, I think this is the approach we have traditionally taken. It doesn't mean it's the approach we have to continue taking. And I think it's a reasonable request for some level of information to accompany this sort of initial initiation of a project.
Yeah, I don't want to stop today, but I'd like to, before
Right.
we get to the fourth item, approval of final development plan, or at the end, approval of financing plan, we should have some idea, like around the time of the preliminary development plan, what the financing is. I think that's plenty of time. I'll write something and send it to you, Chelsea and Zach, and you guys can decide if it's worthwhile or not. You come up with your own. If it's all in your spreadsheets, it's not creating something new.
I think I want, thank you. Of course, this ties directly actually to the last commission meeting where I raised in response the same positioning, which is it would be helpful to have an administrative exercise so that we can align on what should be included in each presentation, but also the timing. The September meeting where we have a preliminary development plan is when we produce and provide our recommendation that the commission can decide to move forward with or not in regards to how to proceed with the next steps of that development, including a preview on what financing would look like. And that is the protocol that we've taken. in the past. As you can see in this current proposal, it also includes and specifies pretty clearly that the path forward is another LIHTC transaction. That's how we renew and refresh and maintain and preserve our portfolio. This
Of
was
course.
previous LIHTC transaction. We've identified in this presentation that that's the path we would pursue, and that we'd rely on the expertise of Zavos in exploring that next step. And that is incorporated in this presentation in terms of what approach we intend to take generally with our development. In the past, 4% has been the approach that we've taken. It's the most successful approach. We've not had too many 9% transactions, so that's an anomaly in our experience. But we can definitely provide the additional details at the next time that we present this in September. And prior to that time, we can all align and agree on what's reasonable in terms of what staff would be able to produce and when. Because we do need the support of consultants to prepare a comprehensive presentation that you can respond to. And that's not something that we develop entirely in-house. And that's a part of why we take the steps that we take.
And I knew it was a 4% deal. It was, and the other commissioners did. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I appreciate your willingness to present something. It's, as I've said, we're committing $1.4 million. I don't have any question that the staff is capable, more than capable. We should just understand it. And Jeff's question was on point.
I think one thing just you could do, for example, it's on your schedule, approval of a preliminary development plan. You could say approval of preliminary development and finance plan. That way, you know that you're connecting those two things together as preliminary, and it's going to be something before you submit the tax credit application. And I know what we've been doing recently is engaging our general contractor earlier, so that it gives us a way to firm up these numbers before we get too far in the process. So I think we can get what we want to get. I think we always end up in the right place, but let's just make the journey a little different.
And that's logical. You go to your contractor, they're not charging you money. They know what kitchens cost these days. They know what baths cost, all the finishes, so on and so forth. And you're doing that without spending money on a contractor. Now it's time to spend money, and so we should have some sense. So I appreciate, Chelsea, that you're willing to accommodate this.
Okay. With that, I'm willing to make a motion to advance this forward based on the recommendation of the staff to the full commission.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion is carried. Thank you. And I will also second the appreciation for staff's willingness to accommodate these requests. The next item on our agenda has to do with some renovations to the Metropolitan. And again, I will turn it over to President Andrews.
Thank you. Commissioners, this particular matter relates to one of our original Hallmark properties located in Bethesda. And this particular property continues to be well positioned for us. And there is presented before you our next steps in terms of trying to maximize its earning potential, also revitalize the property to be competitive with other developments in the area, as well as take proactive steps to ensure that our heating systems are in place before the upcoming winter. This particular presentation today will be presented by, here we are. Oh, Gio, our senior financial analyst in the real estate division. Thank you.
Thank you, President Andrews. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Gio Cavallazzi. I'm a senior financial analyst at the real estate division. And as President Andrews summarized, this is a request for approvals related to an upcoming renovation of Metropolitan Apartments in downtown Bethesda. This is building that was constructed in 1997 and comprises 308 units. About 30% of the units are affordable tax credit units. And we plan to, the renovations, the affordable units hadn't been renovated since the building was constructed. Market rate units had a renovation about 10 years ago. Our plan is to re-syndicate tax credit units and renovate all of the units starting in the next few months. Our plan is to close construction financing by the end of the year and start renovations in the first quarter of next calendar year. Page 4, please. So the request here is for approval of pre-development funding related to the transaction itself, and also to approve and authorize the executive director to negotiate early start contract to replace boilers at the property. The boiler replacement is included in the main scope of the contractor, but the boilers currently in place are out of order. I think only one is operational. They're currently off because of the season, but they won't be able to handle the load. That one boiler is not enough for the upcoming winter season. So we propose to move up the replacement of boilers to early start. We would need about 3 to 4 months to put all of those boilers in place and be ready for the season in October. And so our request is for approval to negotiate an early start agreement with the contractor and to provide funding for boiler replacement. The contractor for this project was approved by the commission about this time last year. The general contractor will be Southway Builders, and they proposed guaranteed maximum contracts of $55 million. That price is currently being updated. This is last year's price. So we'll, when we come back to the commission with final development and financing plans, we'll include the details in those plans. Page 8, please. So these are previous pre-development approvals for the project. The first one is $120,000 for pre-development related expenses, mostly due diligence reports. And the second larger, $800,000, is for architectural services. The design and engineering work on this project is now almost completed, and the project team will be ready to submit permit applications in the near future in July. And so our new request, seen on page 9, is for additional funding to fund additional pre-development costs and the boiler replacement. The two biggest items, the total request is about $2.1 million total additional. And as you can see in that table, the two biggest items are the boiler replacement. Our estimated cost to replace all 6 boilers is $800,000 to $900,000. And permit fees for permit applications is $700,000. The rest of the expenses are standard pre-development consultants and other expenses. So the total request in this item is $2.1 million of additional funding from HOC's OHRF. And so those are the two requests, the approval of early start agreement, to negotiate early start agreement, and to provide funding for boilers and pre-development expenses. If there are any questions, I can address them now.
A question on the specs of the boiler. If you could go back to that page, I'm not sure what page that was on, but
page 5. Page 6.
I'm assuming this is a high level of energy efficiency. I don't know if it's the highest or not, or how we're approaching this.
Yeah, it is the highest level energy efficiency. We would have to, the boilers would have to conform to the planned certifications under the tax credit program. So it will be high energy efficiency. I can confirm if this is the highest energy efficiency. We of course have to also keep in mind the cost of replacing them, but we'll work with the general contractor to obtain the highest efficiency allowable by the project budget. Yeah.
There are other questions?
Except,
I won't, oh, go ahead, Roy, go ahead.
the $700,000 proposed for permit fees, is it all paid to the county?
Yes. Department of Permitting Services.
That's a good way to reduce and create more affordable housing. We figure out a way to begin to talk about these permit fees. Goodness gracious.
Yes, and the final permit fees could be higher.
Oh, I know it will be. This is just the first dip into the water. Yeah.
I won't repeat my prior comments because they apply here also. I would say that when Zach made a nice presentation to us about the Bethesda portfolio, I asked and it was agreed that we would get a sense of the equity that's accumulated in these properties over time. And I was going to ask where that stood.
Right. This is another scenario in which the request from the dais, we need to get in alignment in regards to what and how to prioritize. That request, as I shared at the time, would require a deep dive in terms of getting a good understanding of that equity across the entire portfolio would be a pretty significant project. And in terms of ensuring that we're providing accurate information may even involve the need of relying on a broker or someone to do that type of appraisal assessment other than relying on Zillow, which might not be that reliable. So I defer to the chair to give guidance in regards to where we prioritize that request along with many of the other projects that we're currently.
Well, staff had some number. We don't need to go hiring consultants. The brokers are always easy to ask because they're happy to participate, hoping that they get the work. And brokers aren't always that accurate either. But it wouldn't be that hard to take NOI and apply a cap rate to say a Bethesda marketplace. But in any case, there are numbers floating around that we've talked about before, and it would be useful to know what the embedded equity was. I asked that question before when Zach made his presentation on just the Bethesda properties, and people acknowledged that they could provide that to us, I should say.
Right. And that's why I continue to encourage the team on the spot. And it is difficult for us all. We all say yes, of course, but in terms of timing, sequencing, and prioritization, would love to discuss directly with the chair of this committee as well as the board in terms of prioritization. And yes, that was a request previously. And across the portfolio is pretty extensive. So
Yeah, I think one of the things for sure is that what that evaluation would do would give you at that moment in time what the value is of equity. And as you know, that's a movable target.
Of course.
And so that question is, what do we want to invest in doing? You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be an ongoing investment in a third party to continue generating updates to this kind of valuation.
No, we don't need to do that.
And so I just think we just need to understand what we're asking for. And we can sit down and talk about that. And maybe what we need to do is, since we have a number of these kinds of questions are coming up in our Development Finance Committee, that we need to sit down. I think, Jeff, I would recommend that maybe we set a date for sitting down with staff and just really kind of nailing down what we're looking for. Okay? And so they can respond to as opposed to us. That way we can comprehensively look at it as opposed to these one-off questions that come sometimes. Okay?
absolutely.
That sounds
And
like a great idea.
I acknowledge the request. As you can see from today's agenda, the team is just really solely focused right now on advancing these development projects that we have underway and trying to make sure that we don't miss major deadlines or opportunities with the projects that are underway. But there are other requests that we have, not just related to development and finance, in other committees, that it would be helpful for us to come up with a roadmap and a realistic timeline, as well as understand the priorities, as well as, of course, what we're presenting here. There's the back work that we're doing right now on implementation for strategic plans. So we have a lot of work going on in the background, and having a comprehensive discussion would be helpful.
I support that. I appreciate that you're willing to have that discussion. And my question goes to the strategic plan, frankly. So, but thank you for being willing to accommodate this discussion. When do you think what you and Roy will get together and look at a date, or what's the next step?
Yeah, I'll touch base with
Or Jeff?
staff about.
Thank you. I'm not trying to slow down what we're doing here today either.
No, but they're good questions, Robin, and worthwhile. And I think, figure out what the committee needs, and then staff can help build that into the timeline as well. So I appreciate that staff is trying to move forward expeditiously, but it's also appropriate to have our questions answered. So, are there any other questions?
No.
I make a motion to advance the Metropolitan Development forward to the full commission for the review and approval,
Second.
consistent with the staff's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you. The final item on our open agenda today has to do with Heritage Emery Grove. And again, I will turn it over to President Andrews.
Thank you, commissioners. Heritage Emery Grove is an exciting project, and every time we have an opportunity to advance next steps, we are eager to do so. In this particular presentation, this is a pretty specific request related to Camp Hill Square, where we have project-based rental assistance housing that needs to be transferred, and a process that we must follow with our federal counterpart HUD in order to advance the transaction. I'm going to turn it over to Ellen Goff. I don't know who's presenting. Okay, Jay Shepard, our housing acquisition manager, supported by Ellen Goff in our real estate division on this particular matter.
Yes, thank you so much, President Andrews, and good afternoon, Development Finance Committee members. For the record, I am Jay Shepard, Housing Acquisition Manager, and am joined today by Ellen Goff, our Real Estate Operations Manager. As President Andrews mentioned, we are seeking Commission authorization to submit a request to transfer Camp Hill Square project-based rental assistance housing payment contract to the RAD 6 Development Corporation's Washington Square property. And we're also seeking the right to discontinue leasing activities at Camp Hill Square. Camp Hill Square is one part of HOC's owned assets in the Heritage Emery Grove redevelopment. And as part of that redevelopment, staff were recently at the commission in March to obtain approval of a first amendment to the PSA with Haley Development to allow for the modification of that PSA to primarily extend the deadline required for Haley to obtain their preliminary site plan approvals and other entitlements now underway that are estimated at 18 to 24 months. Concurrent with timing of this disposition, staff are preparing a comprehensive relocation plan for the current Camp Hill Square residents to ensure that all are relocated to a comparable unit and that HOC adheres to the various Uniform Relocation Act, Montgomery County Department of Housing and Community Affairs, displaced resident requirements, and payment of all relocation expenses. Property management staff will work to identify a relocation unit for each household, either within HOC's portfolio or to a unit of the resident's choice, following all regulatory requirements for that relocation. All the residents will have the right to return to the property once the redevelopment is complete. In order to preserve the 10 units of affordable housing currently at Camp Hill Square, staff are proposing to submit a request to HUD, Housing and Urban Development, to transfer the PBRA HAP contract to Washington Square property. And as you know, Washington Square is less than a half mile away. It's on the other side of Mid-County Highway on Washington Grove Lane. And it would allow Camp Hill Square residents who are currently under the HAP contract to relocate to that nearby property in the same general area and keep residents within the same community to provide that continuity of schools, daycare, and employment. Slide 5 outlines the transfer budget authority including tenant protections. It also outlines the necessity for discontinuing leasing to ensure that the property is vacant at the time of disposition. So in conclusion, staff are asking to authorize, number one, the president and executive director to submit the request to transfer the housing assistance payment contract from Campbell Square to Washington Square property. And then secondly, to authorize staff to discontinue the leasing activities at Camp Hill Square effective immediately. And Ellen and I are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
I think the only question I had was, we noted that there are 10 project-based rental assistance vouchers, but it looked like in the briefing materials that there were only 5 tenants that are currently using those PBRAs. Did I read that accurately?
There's 5 who are actually receiving subsidies. So I believe that there are 7 of those units occupied. Some of the units were in the building with the fire. So we do have a couple vacancies on that HAP contract. And I think that a couple of tenants were terminated, but they can stay in the unit if their income goes up. They're just not receiving subsidy.
I see. So we're basically only using 5 of the PBRAs right now.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, definitely want to get somewhere where we can use all of them.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions?
No.
If not, is there a motion to recommend or support the staff's recommendation and send this to the full commission?
Motion.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Are there any other items for the open agenda today? If not, pursuant to section 3305B and D of the General Provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, I move to adopt the written closing statement dated June 25, 2024, and to adjourn this open session to a closed session to discuss 2 topics. First topic is the potential acquisition of real property located in Silver Spring. This topic is being discussed in closed session in order to protect HOC's bargaining power and to protect confidential commercial and financial terms about the transaction. The statutory sections that allow this discussion to be closed are sections 3-305B3 and 3-305B13. Second topic is the discussion of confidential commercial and financial terms for the modification of loans at HOC-owned properties. The statutory section that allows this discussion to be closed is section 3-305B13. If a member of the public that is watching this meeting in real time on YouTube wishes to object to the closed meeting, please comment in the YouTube chat box or contact HOC's General Counsel. Instructions can be found in the Open Meetings Act objection procedures, which is posted on HOC's website. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This meeting is now adjourned and we will move into closed session. Thank you.